everyone, welcome back at Charlotte from At Charlotte's House. Today is my last ornament in my 12 Days of Ornament series. Thank you so much for following along. I have had the best time. You're not going to want to miss the last one. Stay tuned. I am planning to make something out of these birch logs that I bought at the Home Depot. I have already cut them into slices. You can obviously go to your craft store. They do sell them pre-sliced. I find that this is a little bit more cost effective, but obviously you need to have your own saw in order to pull this off. I do, and I did. I didn't measure. I'm guessing it's about 1 centimeter. It's totally up to you. It doesn't make any difference, but you do need to have a little bit of thickness for this project, so don't make them too skinny. In order to make this ornament, I needed to figure out a way to route a triangle into my slices. I called in some audible help from my friend Kayla, but you can make this too, and I was able to make a jig. Here's how I made the jig. First, I determined how big I wanted that triangle to be. So I just cut out a template from a piece of paper, determined that that fit on most of the slices of wood, and then I transferred that triangle to a piece of scrap wood. The next thing I did is I figured out how far away from my router blade was the edge of this guide here. And then I was able to screw in place essentially a fence. So my jig looks something a little bit like this. Here's a look at the actual jig that I made. You'll notice that the first pass I went on with the router, I felt like that triangle was going to be too big for most of my slices. So I was able to unscrew and adjust the sides just a little bit. So ultimately this smaller triangle is the one that I'm going to use. So I routed all the way through this piece of plywood. Now that I have my jig all set up, I'm simply going to place my slice of wood on top. I'm going to hold it in place with a few beads of hot glue, and then I can go back over it with my router and make sure that I have the perfect triangle. I've already made sure to set the depth of my blade so that it goes about 1/8 of an inch below this cut mark. I don't want to cut out a lot into my slice of wood, but I do want to cut out enough that I can pour some resin in there. So I guess I'm not going to be using hot glue for the next one. Tell me that is not so cool. I don't want to use the whole container, so I have already marked half and half. Whenever you're working with epoxy, it is essential that you get your measurements pretty close to perfect and follow all the direction. And it might be a little bit too cold to be working with it. All right, I've had to move inside because it was too cold outside. And now I'm going to add the hardener. Now again, you'll notice those 2 black lines. That's my system for making sure that I measure these perfectly 1-to-1, especially if I only want to use a little bit of my material and I'm not using the whole thing. Whenever you are working with resin, you want to follow the directions impeccably. And usually that means making sure that you're mixing an exact 1-to-1 ratio. You also want to make sure that you stir it for the recommended time. Alexa, set a timer for 2 minutes. I bought this green powder. Add just a little bit. I am using a syringe to give me a little bit more control when I'm pouring the epoxy into my trees. When you are working with epoxy, one of the tricks that you can do is go over the surface with a heat gun and it will pull the air bubbles out. In this situation, because I want them to look like Christmas trees, I actually don't think I mind that texture. I'm back the next day. The resin has hardened, so it worked perfectly. perfectly. One thing that I encountered that I wasn't anticipating was that as I brought the wood inside, some of these cracks that I didn't notice out in the shed got a little bit larger as the temperature changed, and it meant that my resin dripped through the bottom. Not a big deal. I was planning to put some felt on the back anyway, but you want to make sure that when you leave your ornaments to dry, you want to elevate them. Ideally, you would seal the wood first so there's nowhere for that resin to go. I didn't think of it because I didn't notice the cracks, but you just want to be aware. I am simply going to trace onto a piece of felt. The shape of the wood is just sort of curious enough that I don't want to guesstimate. So I'm going to trace, and then I'm going to cut well inside my trace line. And this way, I don't have to drill into my ornament. I can simply sandwich a piece of ribbon between the felt and the back of my ornament. I think that's gonna look super cute. To assemble each one, I'm simply gonna add my ribbon first. And then I'm gonna go back with the felt, cover all that mess. Perfect. I am finished, and I love these little resin ornaments. They are such a fun twist on just the plain rustic wood slices. I can't wait to hang them on the tree. Thank you guys so much for following along with my 12 Days of Ornament series. I cannot believe that I am finished. If you are just tuning in now, then make sure you head over to my channel. I have a playlist. I have shared 12 ornament tutorials, 12 Days of Ornaments, and this is the last one. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and happy decorating, everyone.